Welcome, LA Progressive friends and family. This is Sharon here, Sharon Kyle, and I'm here with Dr. Kofi Charu Nat Turner. And he's a professor, and he's given me permission to use the name Nat. It's a long name, Nat.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a very
And
heavy name.
yes, it is. And I'm hopeful that you will give an explanation as to why you have such a heavy name. And the way that I found out about you is one of your students contacted me. And as a result, I went and I watched a TED talk that you gave. And I'd like for you to share with the LA Progressive community what was the topic of that talk and what spawned the work that you're doing now at the University of Massachusetts Amherst.
Wow, that's a big question. You said my name and what spawned the TED Talk. Um, I can do my name is pretty easy to say. It's my parents are revolutionaries, so they gave me a name of two revolutionaries. Nat Turner, many of your audience will be familiar with, 1831, Southampton County, Virginia. Um, but Charu is an Indian name, another revolutionary who led the largest revolution, one of the largest revolutions in India for human rights and civil rights as well. Um, and then my name Kofi is from Ghana, and I studied abroad as a sophomore, and I built a library in Ghana, and they gave me the name Kofi. I'm born on Friday, and so they gave me that name. So that it links with the other names, by the way. They say Kofi Baboni is troublesome Kofi. They say Kofi is too much trouble because of these two characteristics from God, innovative and loving, which is very much like Nat Turner and Charu Mazumdar. Innovative to lead these revolutions and because they love their people. And so I see myself in that vein as well.
So you're an innovative revolutionary, and your
Yeah.
parents were revolutionaries. Now,
Yes.
I think you told me that you were from Los Angeles. Were your parents also?
Yes. Uh, well, I'm half of my family's from Los Angeles, and actually, before I even begin to say about that talk, that TED talk I gave, I wanted to just acknowledge my ancestors and my grandmother, particularly on my father's side, who was born on a plantation in Georgia. I mean, sorry, in Arkansas, but her grandfather was actually born into slavery on a plantation in Georgia. And so um, it's my grandmother who I've written a book that it was going to have a book launch on June 1st in Los Angeles, in Leimert Park. And so we're hoping folks come out to Soul Folks and represent for this book launch. She was the greatest civil rights leader in Los Angeles history. She worked with Martin Luther King, Malcolm X when he would visit Los Angeles. And again, you know, our history is being under attack right now by the current administration. They're trying to erase our history, Black history, and that sort of thing. But Caffie Greene and Black women's history was untold and kept under wraps even before this administration. So I wrote this book to sort of uncover her incredible rise to, again, being one of the greatest civil rights leaders in Los Angeles history. And so yeah, I just want to acknowledge her and bring her into this room and into this space and let the audience know that this book launch is going to happen June 1st in Los Angeles in Leimert Park.
Oh, that's awesome. You know, when I contacted you, I didn't know about the June 1st launching. So this is perfect. And
Right on.
I'm probably 5 miles away from Leimert Park. So I will
Perfect.
definitely be there.
Great. 4 to 6. We hope everybody can come on out.
And it's going to be in Leimert Park where? At
At
which
Soul
bookstore?
Folks.
At Soul
S
Folks.
SOLEFOL. I think it's X. Soul
Okay.
Folks.
Yeah, I'll put up a little screen. I don't know if you have a flyer or anything that's already ready.
Yeah,
If you
we have
don't,
one.
don't worry. You
We
do?
have one. I'll
Okay.
send it to you.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so now let's get back to this TED Talk. And one of the reasons that I reached out to you is I was sharing with you a little bit before we began to record. And that is that what I was sharing with you is that the LA Progressive is a progressive daily digital publication. We do interviews on YouTube, and we have a podcast. But our home is laprogressive.com. And we really believe that in order to have true democracy, we need a strong progressive movement. But my concern is that we have such a gulf between the races that until we work on healing and bringing the races together, I just can't imagine how we can have the kind of democracy that we know is necessary in order to have universal health care and quality public education and so on. So when I saw your TED talk and you were talking about trauma, I thought, wow, I want to hear more from this young man. I hope you don't mind me calling you a young man. Yesterday or day before yesterday was my 68th birthday. So everybody
Thank
is
you.
kind of young.
Yes, no, I appreciate being called young. That is, but yes, so to just jump in there and sort of answer your question, and I agree 100% with you that um, any movement in this country that's going to bring greater liberation to all of us is going to be intersectional. And that, again, going back to my grandmother and again, this launch of this book, she moved and worked intersectionally. She worked with, of course, the Black community, but she also worked with the Latino community. She worked with the indigenous folks. Um, she has that on her list of work. She clearly worked with white folks, Kenny Hahn in Los Angeles, and the son, Jimmy Hahn and Janice Hahn, all know her and spoke at her funeral even. Um, so these her move, and then beyond race, she also moved, with the LGBTQ community. She was
Really?
way ahead of her time with that. Um, you know, so that she was out in the front in the Black AIDS in the Minority AIDS Project in Los Angeles, helping make sure they got that funding together, um,
Wow.
and a pioneer in healthcare. So yeah, she was fierce and fearless, and yeah, she stepped up. And so we're hoping that this book project, and even I start my TED talk by acknowledging her, and we're hoping that this book lights a fire in all of us to not only, as you say, engage intersectionally, but also to step up and fight, and push back against these tendencies to divide us and to oppress.
Yeah, yeah. See, I don't have much hope. Well, I think I'm certainly, and the LA Progressive is certainly not the outlet that would appeal to the MAGA type. Somebody else needs to talk to them. But I'm really interested in people of good faith, white people of good faith, who would never join the kind of club that is racially exclusive. However, their lives are lived in racially exclusive ways. Their neighborhoods may be all white, or the companies that they work for are strategized racially. There's a racial hierarchy, and they don't do or say anything about it. So I really want to impress upon progressives of good faith that I don't care how much marching you're going to do, until we come together in our regular daily lives, more than likely we will remain fractured as we have been for 400 years.
That's right. So going back to this TED talk, one of the things that I have come into my consciousness, especially after writing the book on my grandmother, has been this piece around trauma and healing. And as you say, there is the need for this, I call it intergenerational healing, but it's in interracial healing as well. And so the way I've begun to think about it is that, and I've learned it through yoga, to be quite frankly, and you might see it in the TED Talk, which is all my life I've been a teacher and I've taught every subject, all the subjects that are outside of you. I've gone to the fancy universities, the Ivy Leagues, the UC Berkeley's, even professor at UMass, but nowhere in those schools did they ever teach you how to study your inside, your feelings, your emotions, your traumas, what motivates you, how you respond to things. And it is this practice of yoga, quite frankly, that I learned, let's say more than a decade ago now, um, that is what I like to call a moving meditation. So, I had learned static meditation where you sit and it's a way to calm your nerves and be peaceful and present. But what that doesn't really prepare you for is this real world. And when you're moving around and things are happening fast, and how to bring that same centeredness and calm and clarity to your actions when you are in the real world and moving. And yoga to me does that. And so I had started to study yoga for years and years and years and was receiving the benefits about, my getting in touch with myself. And so that was a body of literature I was really um, excited about. And then there was this body of literature that I had been studying my whole life around Black liberation, social justice, all of the scholars from Du Bois to Fanon, and of course, even the work of, you know, Toni Morrison, Harriet Tubman, all of them. But then I read some work by a gentleman by the name of Resma Menachem, and I don't know if you've heard of him
Yes,
yet,
my
but
grandmother's hands.
my grandmother's hands. Uh, when I read that book, it congealed two large bodies of knowledge that I had acquired over my life around, again, like I said, Black liberation thinking and social justice, education, and then also um, this yoga and this ancient wisdom tradition of our bodies. So what he calls is somatic abolitionism, um, is sort of the where my work has come and sits, is to think about how we utilize all the knowledge we have about equality and what it would look like, but also with the fact that that trauma has happened to us, our bodies, our ancestors, in this case, my grandmother, Caffie Greene. Um, and yeah, what we can do to heal our bodies and white folks' bodies. I'm half Black and half white. So every day when I meditate and try to come to grips within my own body about the trauma my ancestors have faced on both sides and trauma they've inflicted, quite frankly, on both sides. And so it's these practices and these processes and these as Resma calls them reps that I do with myself and my students and my colleagues on a daily basis that I encourage that just need to be practiced sort of nationwide and worldwide, quite frankly, on a regular basis.
So, what kinds of benefits have you personally experienced from practicing this?
Good question. Well, I think one of the first things is being able to breathe, pause, and get oxygen to my brain so that I can make the best decision in the moment um, that I can, and you know utilize my mouthpiece in the way that I would have hoped I would have done. You know, and not sort of, I don't want to say make a mistake or make a flippant comment that does more harm than good. And so I think it's helped me in that way. Um, but yeah, it's brought a lot of peace to my mind and my body as well. Um, you know, I don't harbor, uh, you know, so many things and get so, let's say, worked up or out of whack. But I really am able to channel and direct my energies toward projects that can get us more free and help organize others and train others in these practices so that they can do similar work.
So, before your grandmother passed away, had you begun this journey of using yoga? And did she know about it?
No, she didn't. But what part of my journey she had gone on with me was the whole all the fancy schools. She was really proud of me that I had studied these things. And she had known I had gone to Ghana and started that library. And she was very, very proud of me doing that. And she actually helped in some of the organizing, getting books and that sort of thing. But but yeah, yoga. But oh, you know what? Actually, she she helped me find my first meditation spot, and that was in Los Angeles at the we call it Simply Wholesome. There, it was a Mariah Institute
I know
there.
Simply Wholesome.
Yeah, and there's a they had a metaphysical church in the back, based on similar to Agape, which I think is more popular now in LA, but it was a smaller version there. Um, and they taught me, that's where I learned meditation. And she encouraged me to go there. I had asked her, I said, Grandma, what is what religion should I be? Because I had studied Islam at Brown and in other countries, and then I had also studied, of course, Christianity a bit, but her advice was try them all. And so when I was living with her in 2000, yeah, I sought out to go to all of the different religions, Christian churches. I went to all of them, Presbyterian, the synagogues. I tried everything. Um, it was this meditation that we learned at Simply Wholesome that was at the Mariah Institute, was started me on that meditative journey. And then
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
I added yoga later, but that was thanks to her. Thank you for pointing that out.
I noticed that in your TED talk, you mentioned Thich Nhat Hanh,
Right.
and his type of meditation that I'm aware of is a walking meditation. Do
Hmm.
you incorporate that into your meditation as
Absolutely.
well?
Absolutely. And Thich Nhat Hanh, I included him because he's one of my greatest teachers as well. But I like to quote him also for saying, he says, people say they don't have time to meditate. They don't have time to meditate. He said, you can meditate when you're brushing your teeth.
Mm,
It's the time to meditate, you know, while
wow.
you're eating mindfully, you know. And so he makes it so accessible, like you said, walking, like anytime you are, you can do these practices to to build that gratitude and that humility and that reverence for life and
Mm.
respect for others, humanity, and not only humans, but the 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 life on earth.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it seems to me, certainly for me personally, there's been no other time in my life when I felt a stronger need to engage in that kind of practice, particularly when you consider the messages that we're bombarded with now. Of course, the LA Progressive, my husband and I publish and edit and write every day. And so, we're kind of immersed in a lot of this really negative
Mhm.
information. And so it's important that we have ways to sort of cleanse the palate. And I just thought that it was wonderful that you were talking about all of this education that you received. And I want you to tell us about the schools that you went to. And yet, after receiving, going to all of these fabulous, well regarded universities, this mindfulness seems to be the thing that has taken you on the furthest journey. So, talk to us about your education.
Yeah, like we said, I love to talk about, I'm a professor of education. So I love to talk about my journey to education. I'll tell you, um, the first school I ever went to was the Oakland Community School, founded by the Black Panther Party. I was one of those little boys getting that free breakfast. You know what I mean? So anyway, that experience left an indelible mark on my psyche of how liberating education could and should be. And it's been from that point, I guess I was probably about 4 years old, 5 years old, that I've sought that out, and I've sought that education to be that way. for myself and for all of my students that I've ever worked with and collaborated with. Um, so yeah, from that first school, my next school was a bilingual immersion school in Berkeley, California, Thousand Oaks Elementary. And then I went to public school in Los Angeles, which was very segregated. And so that also left a mark on me, where they had the Latino students in a whole bungalow building back behind the school. And I was they put me with my brown skin in regular classes, and other black students in regular classes. And then they reserved the honors courses for white and Asian students. But my mother's white, so she fought to make sure I was in those honors classes. Um, and from there, I went on to what we regard sort of here on the West Coast as the best high school on the West Coast, Harvard Westlake. I got to go to school up in Bel Air and Beverly Hills with some some folks, and and yeah, that was actually the most challenging educational experience of my entire life.
In what
To
way?
go socially, um, physically, to the commute from Inglewood to out to the Valley and Bel Air, um, and then yes, socially, just the vast wealth, the vast inequality in Los Angeles or in the United States. You could see it better than I had ever seen in my life, or I think many people have ever seen. Um, and I'll give you one example. Was in 1992 during the um, LA uprising, after Rodney King was so severely beaten. Um, the liquor store right next to my house in Inglewood burned down. The next day, I went to school in Bel Air, Beverly Hills, and the students looked at me and they said, "Did that happen where you live?" And there was nothing um, going on. Uh, Interestingly enough, a day later or 2 days later, folks started to come to Beverly Hills and Bel Air, and school was closed a few days later. But um, anyway, just the vast inequality
Yeah, it's like
was
we have
shocking.
several, it's like we have several different countries within one country. And well, even in Los Angeles County, we have several different countries in Los Angeles County.
Right,
During
right.
the Rodney King 1992 civil unrest, I happened to also be in Inglewood at that time. And I wasn't living there, but I had a boyfriend who was living there.
Mm.
And where Rodney King was arrested, the beating happened on Foothill Boulevard in Lakeview Terrace in front of the apartment complex where I lived. And instead of going home the night after the trial, I thought there was going to be trouble out in Lakeview Terrace. I decided to go to my boyfriend's house in Inglewood. Little did I know that I was headed right into the civil unrest. And I later learned, most recently, I did an interview with Colin Powell's chief of staff, um, Lawrence. I'm, his name is escaping me, but I'll
Frank
bring it
is
up.
Lawrence Frank. Mm.
No, no, but
Yeah,
it's okay.
I know who you're
I'll
talking about.
yeah. So I did an interview with him, and he was telling me and my husband that George H.W. Bush, who was president at the time of the civil unrest, his intention was to send the military into Los Angeles and to quell the unrest and using any means necessary, meaning
Mm.
you could shoot to kill. And when Colin Powell got wind that George H.W. Bush was going to go ahead and let them go into LA and potentially shoot um, the citizens, Colin Powell went and had a long talk with George H.W. Bush, explaining to him the situation in Los Angeles and really the situation in all of urban America and the huge disparities, the economic disparities, and all of the other disparities associated and tied to race and ethnicity. And George H.W. Bush changed his mind. So while there were tanks in the streets of Los Angeles, no one was shot.
Mhm.
No one was killed,
Right,
shot and
right,
killed.
right.
So I was thankful
Yeah,
to
so
hear
that
that.
that was my high school.
Wow.
And that school was the hardest academic challenge that I faced in my life, even harder than getting tenure. And I said that in my sort of in my TED talk. Um, that was challenging. But then I went on to Brown University.
Lawrence
Again,
Wilkerson. Sorry, Lawrence
Lawrence
Wilkerson.
Wilkerson. Yeah, that's his name. That's his
Yes.
name. Yeah. So I then after Harvard, I got to go to Brown University. Again, what I say is best undergraduate university in the United States. So I was very happy to get there. And from there, that's where I got to go to Ghana as a sophomore. And
Ah,
I wanted to go to a black college, and I was sitting with some students, and they said, "Why don't you go to Africa?" I said, "What? I could do that? Okay." So as a sophomore, I was just out to Ghana, and I was standing under a tree one day with a gentleman who's a teacher like me, and I tried to be philosophical. I said, "If you could have anything in the world, what would you want?" And he said, "I'd like a library." And being from Los Angeles, it didn't make any sense to me. I figured we have libraries everywhere. What do you mean you want a library? He said, "Well, we passed a village resolution for a library, and it passes every year, but it never happens." I said, "Why?"
resources.
He said, "We don't have the money for the books." I said,
Yeah.
"Okay, I'll send the books." And that's all I promised. But then I went back in 98 and renovated the site and built the library. And then I visited again in 2000. I walked into the library, picked a book off the shelf. No one recognized me. And um, I saw all these children reading. And so a tear
Oh,
came to my eye. It was just amazing.
wow.
Um, but the
It's, you know, and
postscript,
go ahead. I didn't mean to
well, I
interrupt
was
you.
just
Go
going to say
ahead.
the postscript on that was my university, Brown, got involved, Princeton University got involved, and the Canadian government got involved. And it spawned all these little libraries around there. But go ahead.
Wonderful. You know, in this day and age, as we are experiencing something that I've never experienced before, the eradication or the attempted eradication of diversity, equity, inclusion, banning books, even books written by Toni Morrison and Alice Walker and probably James Baldwin even. What does it mean to you that you were able to go into Ghana and open up this world of literature to children who they didn't have books not because they were banned, but because they just didn't have the resources. And here we can experience the same thing, but it's because ours are banned.
Yeah. No, I had been teaching in yeah, I taught in South Central Los Angeles, and I saw that these students there had all the books, but they didn't weren't able to even read. And so these students in Ghana were highly literate, but had no books. So it's always something, right? So
Wow.
yes, this has been my course to get the resources out to Ghana where they need it and get the education here in this country in the ways that it needs to be. Um, so yeah, that's what I did at Harvard. After Brown University, I graduated, and then I came and taught in South Central Los Angeles, in Linwood, where my grandmother lived. I lived with her for that year, and like I told you, she challenged me to go out and study all the religions and figure out which one was mine. And after that year, I went to Harvard, and my goal was to start a school. Um, and they trained me at Harvard how to start a charter school, and that's what I planned to do. But then I went and taught in Japan for 2 years. And then when I came back to UC Berkeley to do my PhD, I planned to write the pedagogy of reparation. But
Mm.
my exactly, I was on fire. I was ready to write the pedagogy of Black reparations and try to articulate what an educational framework would look like for Black folks. And that's really how I saw reparations in the modern day, rather than the 40 acres and a mule, but rather a first-rate education here between our ears. But I I quickly learned, or my advisor there, Jabari Mahiri, shout out to Jabari. He said, "Hey, rather than that, why don't you study what is the most cutting edge education? What does it look like for students right now?" And so what that meant was, having students using multimodal media production to make their own videos and documentaries about what reparations meant and what it was. And what that meant was using hip hop, and the hip hop students want to integrate a consciousness into their lyrics and into their beats and their music videos. So that's what I worked on. Yeah, at UC Berkeley and on my PhD.
Amazing, amazing. Well, let's get back to two things, but before we close up, I want to talk a little bit about your grandmother. And so she was the grandchild or the daughter of an enslaved person.
She was the grandchild. Her
Grandchild,
grandfather was enslaved in
enslaved.
Georgia.
Did she
And then
know
her
him?
father, uh,
Did-
yeah, she would talk about him, Grandpa Dan, she'd call him. But yeah, he, he
We
was,
because we often think of slavery as being so far in the past. And I have a great grandmother. I had a great grandmother who died when I was 10 years old. She was born in 1863. She was 104 years old when she died. And she was a regular part of my life. She was never enslaved, and she wasn't born in the United States. She was born in the Caribbean, where they did have slavery, but their slavery had been abolished by the time she was born in 1863.
mm,
Her mother and father, however, more than likely were both enslaved. Her mother, an African woman, and her father, a Chinese man. The
mm,
Chinese were brought into the Caribbean, and just the men, no women, to help to build up the infrastructure. And so they were indentured servants. But I've done a lot of research, and really there was very little difference between being enslaved and being an indentured servant
mm.
in the mid 1800s in the Caribbean. But I was too young to ask my grandmother any questions. She died, I was 10 years old. I wish I can just kick myself. I wish I had known to even ask the questions that I have now. But so your grandmother did talk about your grandpa Dan.
She mentioned him. She would always just refer to him as he had mailman's hair. Um, and what she was meaning there was that his hair was very straight. And
Oh,
so one could presume or
I
assume
see.
he may have been a child of,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, rape.
yeah.
And so that was sort of his moniker that she would say about him. But yeah, I got to live with her and learn from her, sit with her, go to meetings with her. Uh, at her old age, her ankles, like Resma talks about his grandmother's hand, I would her ankles would be very swollen. I mean,
Oh,
this is a woman who said she picketed her entire life. Okay. And that means she fought for every advancement Black people in Los Angeles got. She needed to be on the picket line to make that
mm-hmm,
happen, from
mm-hmm.
transportation, healthcare, on and on and on. So her ankles, as she was aging, getting into their 80s, were swollen, and she would sit back and say, "Oh, my ankles hurt." So I would massage her ankles and make
Oh,
her feel better, her feet. And she was so appreciative. She never asked me, but she was so thankful. She said, "Oh, thank you, Chada." That's what she called me, Chada. But yeah,
so tell us
that's
again when the book is gonna be launched on June 1st, and the name of the
yes.
book is
The name of the book again relates to what we're talking about our history being under attack. So even before this administration, the name of the book is Caffie, Greene, and Black Women Activists,
ah,
Unsung Women of the Black Liberation Movement. And so not only is she unsung, but many of the Black women mothers in the community who she organized and trained to organize are unsung as well. So this project is really to bring their efforts and their actions to the forefront of history and not be erased
well,
at all.
I'm looking forward to attending the launch and looking forward to reading the book and then doing a report on the book to our community and encouraging people to buy it. So you're going to be in Los Angeles on June the 1st, and the name of the place where you're going to be is
Soul
Soul
folks,
Folks.
soul folks. Yep. And that's in Leimert Park on June 1st, which is a Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m.
Awesome. Well, it's been a real pleasure talking to you, Nat. I can't wait to meet you on June 1st. I had no idea when we set this up, we would even be talking about this and then seeing each other so soon. So,
Right on.
congratulations on your great accomplishment, and congratulations on doing the work that you're doing with mindfulness. Looking
Right
forward
on.
to meeting with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Dick and you, Sharon, and look forward to meeting you.
Okay, thanks again.
Thank you. Bye bye.
So long.
Thank you for sticking around. If you like the LA Progressive content and the discussions we have here, please consider clicking the subscribe button below and also give us a thumbs up. That helps to grow our audience by feeding the algorithm, which helps to get this content in front of more eyes. Thanks for stopping by. We really appreciate your support.